Hi, this is Paul with Springfield Speaker, SpringfieldSpeakerRepair.com, and today we are going to show you how to use our kit to recone a 12-inch JL Audio 12W6. This repair will also work on the 10W6. Everything's the same except the cone itself. First, we're going to show you what's included in this kit. Alright, this is our 12W6 kit. We also have it available for the 10W6. Now, this is not the W6 version 2. The W6 version 2 is completely different. Cannot use this on the version 2. So this is only for the JL Audio 12W6 or the JL Audio 10W6. We've got a genuine cone here. JL Audio 12W6. Foam's already installed. That's exactly what was originally on the sub. We've got the genuine coils. This is a dual 6-ohm coil for the 12W6. Got your spider, progressive rolled, flat spider. Actually, yeah, it's a flat spider. Original dust caps. Now, different subs. This one, for example, came with this chip gasket that has a shiny finish on it. Now, for the 10W6, we do have a gasket very similar to that one that looks the same. But for the 12-inch, we do not have that available to us anymore. So in the kit, we send one of these 12-inch Rubitex gaskets, and they're very good quality gaskets. They're chipped with an actual rubber seal surface on them. So these are what we're going to use in the repair. Then, of course, we've got our kit, our install kit, which includes speaker shims. These are voice coil shims, 2 feet of 1600-watt lead wire. We've got a clear CA glue. We've got our BSC adhesive for putting everything together. And then we've got our tack, lightning tack, for curing our CA glue. Couple brushes. Honestly, we really don't use the brushes to speak of. We put them in the kit because some people insist on having brushes, but we rarely ever use these brushes in our shop. We usually use the tip of the bottle when we have glue to spread, and instead of putting a bead of glue and brushing it, the stuff dries so quickly, we just go ahead and spread it with the tip of the bottle as we're applying it. So I'm going to straighten up here and we're going to get started. Alright, here we've got our 12W6 sub. You can see this one, the foam had deteriorated and come detached from the cone. Normally, this is a simple fix. We can just put a new foam on. We do sell that foam as well. However, in that coming detached, it caused some weird stress on the spider, which then came detached as well. You can see the spider is detached here, and when that happened, voice coil started rattling around, smacked the pole piece and the top plate a few times. You knock the finish off that coil, next thing you know, the wire shorts out on itself, and boom, you've got a blown sub. So now it's completely dead. So we're going to gut this thing. Sometimes you could possibly do a recone with just a new spider, a new coil, and salvage your cone, put on a new surround, and reuse the cone in the dust cap. But beyond that, we're going to go ahead and do it with the full kit, replace everything today, and just make it nice and new. So I'm going to start, first things first, take our razor knife. We're going to cut this foam all the way around. Razor knives are cheap and invaluable in speaker repair. Once we've cut that, I'm going to cut the outside diameter of it as well, right up against the metal frame. Something I like to do when I pull these things apart, I kind of like to try and keep the core, the guts intact. I can get a lot of measurements and other information that way. So I'm going to go in here with my super shears, snip the lead wires on that side, snip the lead wires on this side, and we can see that we're almost already ready. It's ready to come out. Normally I would stick the razor blade down in there and cut through that spider, but this one has completely failed. So I just peeled up the rest of the spider, and there's our guts. Okay, so that's nice and simple. These are nice coils. It's a copper coil on a Kapton former, just like the replacement. You can see where it knocked against the pole plate. What it eventually did was it knocked this nice shiny finish off of here, which is what seals these layers of wire from each other, and it shorted out on the top plate. You can even, on this one, even shorted out against the pole piece. You can see where the spark was because we've got some carbon there. So that's the speaker frying right there. So we're going to take this, we're going to set this to the side for future reference because we're going to need it here in a bit. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to take some tape. We're going to tape up this gap. We don't want anything getting down in the gap. The gap is this little ring-shaped hole here that the voice coil slides down into while we're during the function of the speaker. And while we're doing all the cleanup of everything else, we have to protect that gap to keep anything from getting down in there. So we're just going to tape it up. We did kind of a bad job there. Make sure that it's sealed all the way around so nothing can get in there. Nice and easy. Okay, so now we're taped up. Our gap is secure. We need to clean everything up. We need to clean this surface and this surface so we're ready to start gluing things back together. First, I'm going to take my chisel and I'm just going to go ahead and clean up my spider landing a little bit. You want to use the chisel with the flat side down and the angled side pointing up so that as you scrape, it forces the material upward. Chisel use 101. I'm sure you guys already know how to do that, but I'm kind of a stickler. So we'll go through here. I'm going to get this cleaned up and we'll be back in just a second. Alright, so we've got our spider landing cleaned up. We've got to be careful because it is plastic. We've got to be kind of gentle with that. Next step is we've got to get this gasket off and get our outer frame cleaned. So basically, I can take this razor knife, slip it right in that little seam there where the old foam is, between the steel and the foam. And we're going to just go like this and use our thumb as a fulcrum. As a fulcrum point. Now you'll notice how easy this turns. I've got this on a turntable. We do all our work on a turntable here just because it's easier to hold your tool in one place sometimes and bring the work to you. Nice thing about speakers is they are round, so if you spin them, the work comes right to you. Okay, so blow all this out of here. We've got our gasket cleaned up. It's ready to go. So we're going to set it to the side. Let me hang this up over here. Okay. Next step, we've got to desolder these contacts. Get these wires out of here. We've got our soldering iron. Get them nice and hot. Oops, can't seem to get my iron on there. A lot of people like to use a solder sucker here. I can go either way with it. We've got a solder sucker. Let me grab one. Another solder sucker. We have these available in our store online. Suck the solder out, so now we've got a nice clean eyelet to push the new one through when the time comes. It's funny, I'm filming this video and I haven't allowed my soldering iron to heat up, so I kind of breaking soldering rule 101, but it'll still be okay. We're going to repeat that little process on all 4 of these contacts. All right, so we've got our contacts done. Pull these little seals off the back. It's just a little rubber goop that they stick on back there to keep the leads from vibrating. Now I'm going to take my chisel again. I'm going to clean up this frame. Nice and easy. We're going to hit this outer lip vertically. Get all our old foam residue and paper residue off the frame. So I work this lip vertically a couple times around, and then I'll come back and I'll hit it horizontally as well. Okay, we've got it all cleaned up here. Our frame is good. Our spider landing is good. So this is a spider landing. This is the edge of our basket would be our surround landing. It's okay if you've got a little bit of adhesive residue on here, but you absolutely have to get all the foam and paper off of here. So you don't have to strip it to bare metal, but you've got to get all the foam residue off and all the paper residue. So now we're going to slide that to the side just for a second. We're going to go back to our core. This is the core that we pulled out of this sub. I'm going to pop this cap we don't really care about what it does here because we're replacing all this. If you are salvaging your cone and dust cap, you might be more gentle than I am about this, but I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out of here for demo purposes. I don't care about if I cut something behind it or anything else. There we go. Okay, and there's our voice coil. This is one of the few JL Audio models that does not have a collar piece that goes between the cone and the coil. Several of the JL Audios have a coil collar that actually wraps around the coil and then snaps into the cone. This one doesn't have that, so it makes it pretty simple to work with. So we're going to look at what we've got here, and what I do is I take a depth gauge. This coil is pretty mangled, but most of the time, oh, there we go. There's a spot right there where we've still got the bottom of the former showing. Now you're going to see a lot of repair videos that, you know, say put your coil in and shim it in there real nice, and then you're going to take your spider and you're going to slip it down over the top, and that's great. That's fine and dandy. We do have a little bit of a shortcut that makes it fairly easy, but you have to measure this very accurately. If you've got a good edge to the bottom of your former and a spider that's intact, find that good edge again. There's one little area right there with a good edge, good bottom edge. We take a depth gauge, which is a very accurate little measuring tool, and it measures all the way down to the 64th of an inch. We're just going to use 30 seconds in this demonstration, which is just fine. So we're going to turn this perpendicular to the cone. Don't go flat. Go perpendicular to the coil, and butt it up to the bottom ring of the spider. Now take your measurement. I don't know if we can get in there close enough to see that. Take your measurement there, and you see that this is right at 2 inches. So we've got 2-inch depth from the bottom of the bottom roll all the way to the bottom of this coil. And since we are using the same spider, we know that our measurement is going to be accurate. If this were a different, if we were doing a custom job and this were a different spider, maybe a cup spider, or had different rolls, then we would have to adjust our measurement accordingly. But because we know we're using the exact same spider or the exact same mold, we can match that measurement exactly. So we're going to take that, set it aside, and we're going to slip our spider down. Remember, the outer roll of your spider always has to go up. So here we see the outer roll goes up. If we mount it like this with the outer roll pointing down, our spider's upside down. So we're going to make sure it's pointed right side up. Tuck our coil lead wires in out of the way. I'm going to tuck this down over the top. Now we've got to set that depth to the 2-inch mark to match our other one. So we come here, turn it perpendicular. Oh, look at that, it's almost perfect. And I'm going to make small adjustments. I'm going to start at my seam. You can see the seam in the Nomex there, or in the paper. Start at the seam. See, it's 2 inches. We'll go a little ways. Adjust that to 2 inches. And you can either push with this or push with your thumb accordingly to make the minor adjustments. And we're just going to go a small amount at a time and slowly work our way around here. And then once we're satisfied that we've gotten it an even 2 inches all the way around, we're going to go all the way around again and make sure we didn't move any of our first settings. A little bit at a time. Man, we eyeballed it pretty close to start with. Gosh, that looks pretty good to me. So what I've done here, instead of trying to set my coil to the proper height in the gap, since I'm using genuine materials, I can just exactly duplicate what they did at the factory, and then I know that my coil is set to the proper depth. So it makes that particular part of the repair a little bit easier. All right, I think we're good. We've got a good 2 inches all the way around. I'm going to set that down for a sec. Now be careful, because some spiders on some kits don't fit quite as snugly and perfectly to the coil as this one does. And you have to be careful, because if it's loose, then you may have to get the measurement right and tack it in place just with the one drop of CA glue. Move it, do your adjustment, you know, make sure it's right, tack it in place, rotate it, make sure it's right, tack it in place. But in this case, we're using factory parts, and they snug up very nicely, so it's very nice. I'm going to shake up our glue. We always shake our glue really well. This is our CA glue. It's just a really strong, slightly rubberized version of super glue. This is activator spray, which will cause this to cure instantly, or at least skin over very thick instantly, and complete the curing process in short order. Now that we know we've got this right, get it. Make sure you get this cleaned up a little bit here. So we're going to come back to this. We never want to grab it by the spider. Always hold it by keeping your fingers inside the coil so you don't manipulate where the spider is at any time. And then we're just going to put a little bead of glue. You know what? This bottle needs to be opened up a little bit. I'm going to get a scratch awl, and I'm going to open this up a little bit. I'll be right back. Okay, what we've done is I've taken this angle pick, and I just poke it down in that hole. Make sure I open up that hole just a little bit without cutting the top. I'm going to clean this off so it's clean for later. Go back to what I was doing. I'm going to put a nice little bead of this all the way around. This is a pretty wicked glue. As with any gel super glue, do not, or any super glue period, do not get it on your fingers, or you're going to be wishing you hadn't. And you're going to be asking your mom for some nail polish remover. Whoop, nice. For some nail polish remover so you can get your fingers apart. We're going to get a bead all the way around. Take our activator spray. A few little sprays. Alright, so now we've got our spider mounted to our coil, which is just going to make the whole process of getting it down in here a little easier later. We'll always be mindful of where your lead wires, where your wires are. We don't want them to break. We don't want to accidentally get them glued between the former and the coil. And I'm going to set this to the side to finish curing. It'll only take a few minutes because we've used an activator on it, which immediately activates the super glue. So, come back here. We're back on our frame. I'm going to pull this out. Now be very careful because with an aluminum frame speaker it's different because aluminum is not magnetic. But this is a steel frame speaker. We want to make sure that none of the little pieces of metal that came off of here get down in that gap. So I'm going to grab the air compressor here. Got my air hose. I'm going to make sure to blow this out. And while you were away, I also vacuumed off my workspace and blew out all the little pieces of debris. We need to keep our workspace clean because it's very important that we keep this gap clean. If we get anything down in that gap, we're just asking to blow this thing shortly after we have repaired it. Now we're carefully going to peel our paper out, or our tape out rather. Now we're going to get some wide. Oh, look at that. We've got a coil winding down in there. This is good that this happened because it shows you something else we need to watch for. If you look, I can come down in here. Actually, I'm going to grab some tweezers. If I come down in here with my tweezers, you can see, haha, there was a coil winding down in our gap. That's a no-no. That's got to go bye-bye. We get that out of there. We're going to grab our air compressor again. And we're now going to blow this gap out. Turn the speaker up on its edge. See all the crud coming out of there? There's carbon from the coil grounding out. There's dust. There's little debris. And there's chunks of this little Kapton former down in that gap. We've got to make sure that we get all that out of there. Okay, I've blown this out. We're going to get our flashlight and look down in there. We're looking for a nice, shiny, clean gap all the way down in there. We're trying to see all the way to the bottom. Want to make sure there's no debris whatsoever. I don't see anything. This looks great. But just for insurance, we're going to go ahead and make our tape football that we always do. Get a piece of this about 9 inches long. Fold it into a tape triangle football. Make sure you do this with the sticky side out. You do this with the unsticky side out, you're an idiot and kind of wasting time. But let's go ahead and make sure it's sticky side out. We're going to stick it down in there. Now it's going to stick. You just kind of got to work it back and forth till you get all the way to the bottom of the gap. And then rotate it. We're looking for here little pieces of debris, maybe even little pieces of steel that the air compressor isn't strong enough to blow out, but that will stick to your tape. All we've got is some little bit of dust, probably a little bit of the carbon from the blow when the speaker blew. Okay, we're going to make one more football. You don't want fans blowing and everything blowing right now, because anything could get caught up in a fan and blown into the gap, and we don't want that. Football doesn't need to be pretty, obviously. Mine's ugly. But as long as it's good and sticky, it's effective. The football shape is nice because we can start with a skinny little point and get it down in there. It's easier to get that down in there. Gives us a little rigidity as well to force it down into the gap. Make sure you get a couple good turns in. And then a couple turns holding it steady. Again, we've got a little bit of crud, but nothing too bad. Doesn't look like we have any major particles or anything. There's nothing stuck to my pole piece, so I'm not worried about that. I'm going to blow it out one more time. We're ready to go. So, okay, so now we've got our frame is completely clean. We're ready to, our coil is assembled. We're ready to start putting this thing together. So we're going to take it down, going to do a test fit. Just gently set it down in the gap. You can see, again, factory parts fit perfectly on the frame. We don't have any issues about trimming our spider or anything like that. If this were a custom job, we may have to trim the outer diameter of the spider or the inner diameter of the spider. We often have to do that in order to make a spider fit properly. But as long as we have a good enough lip on the outside to mount down and a good even cut on the inside, then we can get our coil nice and centered. Make sure that when you put this in, you don't have it like that. You want to have your leads lined up nicely with your contacts. Looks like everything's going to fit nicely. I'm going to grab my shims. These shims do come in the kit. And I'm going to carefully set them down in. And what we're doing is we're slipping them in between. This is called the pole piece. We're slipping them between the pole piece and the coil former, which is that orange plastic thing there. That's the Kapton. A lot of subs and most of our custom builds, we use black anodized aluminum formers, but JL Audio likes to use Kapton. So you'll see we have their W7 coils now in stock, and these coils as well. They're on Kapton formers. It may seem like it's wimpy because it's just plastic, but keep in mind it's not the rigidity of it, but rather the heat dissipation properties. And Kapton is surprisingly good at dissipating heat and keeping your sub from blowing up because you got it too hot. So test fit everything here. We got to make sure we get them even. See, now you can trim these down if you need to. The shims in the kit are 2 inches wide. We do this and we don't have 2 inches left. So what we're going to do is take a little bit off, get out our super shears, take a little bit off that width, and slip it right down in there. This ensures that we have it even all the way around. If we overlap those, if we overlap everything and then but don't have anything overlapped on this side, this side is overlapped, then our coil is shifted too far in one direction rather than being centered. So as long as we've got an even amount of shims all the way around, then we can keep it centered. Now this one actually is fairly snug with just one layer of shims. These are 10 mil shims. They're just made of polyester, very simple. At that point, okay, we know now that we have a perfect fitting coil, a perfect fitting spider. Everything will line up nicely, and we've got our shims trimmed properly to be able to shim our coil. So now we'll pull it all apart, set our shims to the side, and we're going to glue this thing down. We take our BSC adhesive. This is a black rubber. It's hexane based. Hexane, toluene, and acetone are the basis for this. There are solvents. What they're going to do is they're going to etch their way into this plastic, and they're going to soak their way into here, and then when the chemicals evaporate, you're going to just be left with a bond of pure rubber. So I'm going to put a nice little bead all the way around. Again, this is where the turntable comes in handy for making it nice and even. Don't get crazy with it, but don't be stingy either. If you get a teeny weeny little bead to holding your spider down, that's just not gonna be ample. But at the same time, you don't need to have it so much that it pours out over the side when you squish everything down in place. Okay, we're gonna line this up. Remember, line up our leads with the contacts. I'm gonna gently set it in place. I'm not gonna press anything in yet until I have my shims. Now, again, I'm gonna install my shims. Now that I know they're correctly sized. All the way around. Whew. On this particular model, we can bottom them right out. They're going to go right to the bottom of the gap. So now you got the pole piece and you've got shims holding the coil perfectly even all the way up and down, and perfectly centered. Now we're going to push this down into the glue, give it a little bit of a turn one way and then back. Kind of work the glue into the grain of the spider a little bit. Now this might be overkill, but this is something we like to do here. Now we've got a good bead of rubber adhesive soaking into this spider, and you can see it bleeding through. In a couple places you can see it bleeding through. That's great. Make sure our leads are still lined up nice and straight. We're going to take our bottle again, give it a little shake, and before this adhesive dries, we're going to top coat it. So this space between this lip and the first roll, we're going to fill with black adhesive. Be careful, I got a little sloppy there. On my second lap, I'm going to make a little mess. We want to do this fairly quick because of what I'm going to do next. Okay, I'm going to spin it. I'm spinning it and letting the centrifugal force flatten that adhesive out a little bit. This may be overkill, but we like to do this on some of ours. What we're doing is we're soaking the top layer of this adhesive through the spider to meet up with the bottom layer of this adhesive, and that way you've got one solid band of rubber impregnated into this spider, which is now etched into the frame. So what that makes for is a very strong bond when this whole thing dries. This adhesive sets up and tacks and gets really thick very quickly. So I'm trying to move as quickly as I can so that when I spin it, the centrifugal force will still actually move the adhesive. Alright. You don't have to do this with the spinning. It's just something I like to do. It really increases, I think it really increases the bond. So Gravity and centrifugal force are going to flatten this adhesive out a little bit, and as it cures, it's going to shrink. So when it shrinks, it's going to shrink, and it's going to suck this down really tight to that frame. So now we're going to tuck our lead wires in. I'm going to just take a little bowl. I'm going to set it there to make sure nothing falls down in the gap. And we're going to let this thing sit for a couple hours before we come back, move on to another project, and make sure that this glue starts to tack up pretty good. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to push this off to the side, let that start to set up. We're going to focus on our cone and our lead wire. What comes in your kit is 2 feet of 1600 watt lead wire. It's braided. And we're going to cut this into 6-inch lengths. Basically, you just need to double it over, make a good snip, double it over again, make a good snip. Okay, now we've got our lead wires are ready to go. Set those to the side. We've got to focus on our cone just a little bit. The cone is made of poly. It's a smooth, impermeable surface. Now these do have a small coat of primer on them, which is great. It's a poly primer which allows our CA glue to stick to them properly. We also like to rough it just a little bit. I take a sanding sponge and just scuff it a little bit more. What we're doing is we're scuffing the area where our glue will glue the cone to the coil. Being very gentle, I'm trying not to scuff anything up here. This is a speaker for a customer, so we want to do a nice job on it. I'm getting just a little bit of scuff in there. You can use a sanding sponge, sanding paper. It doesn't really matter. Just don't sand through the cone. Don't have to get crazy here. We just need to rough that cone up a little bit, and what we're doing is we're giving that CA glue something to break down so that it can bond forever. Alright, well, paper towel, wipe it down a little bit. So there you can see how I've just scuffed it a little bit. So we've got a primer in there, which is good. We don't have to send primer in the kit. It's primed and ready for you to install it. So now that we're going to do that, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to grab our new dust cap. That's the old one. Actually, that old one we could reuse. That's pretty nice. But we promised this guy a new one, so we're going to go ahead and use a new one. This is important too. Take that same sanding sponge or sandpaper, and you need to scuff this edge, the underside lip, the mounting lip of this. Now, you can be a little bit rougher on this. It's not going to hurt anything. But we got to get a good scuff on this all the way around. Alright, now we've got it nice and scuffed. Looks good. Yeah, that's what we need. We need the, this is going to have a solvent-based adhesive that we use to glue it down. So in order to really make it stick good, we really want to get that nice and scuffed up. Now, we bring our cone back over. We'll lay it down. Set our dust cap down in there. Try and get it, I'm going to eyeball where it's centered. Okay. Looks like that's pretty good. If you really want to be a stickler, you can take your depth gauge, measure up, that's 2 and 14, 30 seconds. 2 and 14, 30 seconds. 2 and 12. Oops, that's a little much. That looks pretty good. So now that we've got it nice and centered, take a pencil, put a little weight down on this. This is easy to do before you put the cone on the frame. And it's something to do to prep while you're waiting for your spider adhesive to cure. All right, now we've got a guideline. This is nice because this is where our dust cap will go. We know where we need to put our lead wire holes, everything else when the time comes. So we're going to set that aside. We're going to wait just a little while for the spider to set up, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, we actually let this dry overnight. We got caught up in some other things and let this dry overnight. So I know I told you earlier to let this dry for 2 hours, but you know, overnight's even better. That's great. You look at where I top coated our spider here. You may look at that and say, well, that's overkill and it's kind of ugly. Yeah, it's a little ugly, and it could be overkill. The factory did not do that. The factory only did 1 layer of adhesive. However, remember when the thing got a little off kilter, what I showed you earlier in the video that the spider had done from the factory as well. It had peeled up. This one's not coming off. You're gonna have to work this one to get it off. So I think we've made it a little stronger, albeit perhaps not quite as visually attractive. You can go either way. This is just my personal preference. But here we are. Our glue is well into its cure now. You know, the full cure takes 24 to 36 hours to complete. So at this point, I want to say that we're probably about 15 hours into this one, so it's pretty good shape. We're going to take our cone in, make sure that our leads are still tucked inside the diameter of the coil. We get there, we can see that our cone is a perfect fit. Nice using genuine parts. So everything looks great here. So we're ready to install our cone. So we're going to take this back out. We're going to get our adhesive, our BSC once again. Shake it up. Always shake your adhesive well. And we're going to get a bead. Let me make one quick note. When we put this in place, make a note of where your surround goes. You'll see this one, as with most speakers, only goes about halfway through the mounting holes. So we know that if we put glue all the way to that outside edge at this point in the game, we're just making a mess. So that's not really anything needed. So we're going to put our bead of glue just inside this lip, between the lip and the edge of the mounting hole, and we're going to do that all the way around. Get a decent bead. It doesn't got to be a perfect bead, and it certainly doesn't have to be a giant bead. A giant bead of glue is just asking for a mess, asking for you to get stuff all over your fingers and then end up messing up your foam. We don't need to get too crazy. We usually like to do that and maybe take the edge of the bottle, smear it just a little bit. You can also use the included brushes for this. You don't have to, but you can. This just goes quickly, easily. Okay, so we've got a good bead of glue all the way around. You can see it's already starting to tack up. This stuff is wicked, wicked stuff. It holds awesome. It cures. It starts to really tack and stick quickly. We need to let this breathe just for 10-15 seconds anyhow, because right now all the chemicals that are in this are evaporating. We're going to put our foam down on here, and it's going to make the edge of our foam wrinkle. Don't panic. It's not melting the foam. I've gotten emails and calls from people panicking because it's melting the foam. That's not the case. It is merely leaving a venue for those gases to escape. They have to escape somewhere, so they start to disform your foam a little bit, deform it a little bit, rather. It's not a big problem. You just have to give it a little bit of time, and within a couple minutes it's going to lay down flat. This is curling a little bit. You can see it start to curl here. Starting to get some curl there on the edge. It's not terribly awful, which is good. So we're just going to work this. I'm lifting my finger in between press points instead of just zip around. If I just zip it around, it's going to force everything one way, and we don't want it to do that. So I'm actually lifting my finger, and as it starts to take, we can start to zip it a little bit more. Maintaining pressure straight down. The whole point is to get this foam mounted to the frame nice and straight. Okay, we're going to kind of keep an eye on this for the next few minutes, but in the meantime, we're going to move on to something else. Our cone. We've got our leads. We've now got our leads ready to go here. We've got to get our 4 lead wires that we prepped a little while ago through our cone, suspended over, and soldered into here. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out exactly where they go. Eyeball it good. I mean, you didn't have the cone in the way, and you eyeballed to see that the leads lined up well with the holes. So basically, we now have a line that we know we need to stay below, and we've got a mounting lip on our dust cap that is this wide. So remember to stay at least that far below the line to poke your holes for your lead wires to go through. You can heat up something like this. This is a 90-degree pick. You can use a straight pick, or, you know, in this case, I'm just going to make it simple. Not necessarily smart, but simple. I'm going to use my soldering iron. So I'm going to find a spot, be nice and even in relation to these. Ideally, if we can get an inch up and an inch apart, then we're in good shape. There's one hole. Try and make them even. So we just poke a nice little hole on each side. There we go. Now we've got 4 holes. I'm going to dip that in my cleaner real quick and clean my tip off before that nasty plastic burns on there real bad. Acid in that tip cleaner will clean up my soldering iron, so it's okay. We'll let that clean for a little bit, and we'll come back to our foam. Looks like our foam is really starting to take well. Okay, we're ready to getting ready to glue our center, and we are ready to let this dry for probably 15 minutes before we come back and finish the process. All right. All right, we're going to come in with our CA glue. And it is time, now that this is set up nicely, to glue this. We have this where this is now not going to move at all. So once we glue this and we get this to cure, our core is done. We'll be able to pull our shims not long after that, and everything should move in and out smoothly with no flex whatsoever in any direction. So we're going to come in with our CA glue. Squeeze, put a good bead of this stuff in there. A couple sprays. I'm going to come and spray in each window here in case we got a little seepage. And what I'm spraying there is I'm spraying where the cone meets the spider. Deep inside there. So we'll get a little bit going there. So now we've got a decent grip. Okay. Wipe off our tip a little bit. A couple more sprays. This is an accelerator that is going to, so you can see how it's already skinned over. And it's going to start the curing process in our CA glue immediately. So it's now hardening through, all the way through very slowly. But much quicker than it would if we had not used an accelerator or an activator. Some people call it accelerator, some people call it an activator. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, pretty much the same thing. So We're going to let that dry a little bit, wipe down our polycone a little bit, and get ready to go on to the next step. Next step is our lead wires. We have the 4 that we cut, and we need to attach them to our leads. So easiest way that I've found, get a little tiny 90-degree bend at the end of your lead wire here, and wrap that around your lead wire, maybe a 1/4 inch from the end. Pinch it tight. Whew, I'm having a hard time pinching that. I can't, twisting it the wrong way. There we go. Pinch it tight, and then you're going to turn it in your fingers. Now, it may poke your thumb a little bit. It's not going to kill you. Don't whine too much about it. And keep tension on the lead, as on that wire, as you're twisting the braided lead wire. And you're going to twist this till you get down maybe about 3/8 of an inch from the end, the bottom end of the lead. We're going to go and we're going to do that on all 4. Okay, we've got all of our lead wires twisted on. Basically, I'm going to take this and I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to turn it in the same direction as that lead wire is going, instead of at a 90-degree angle. So now we've got them all coming off straight. Get our soldering iron, clean the tip a little bit. It's good to tin it, melt a little bit of solder on there, kind of gets things going. Get that on here. I'm going to get it a little bit hot. Now, if you have hot solder on the wire, it's going to heat the wire up quicker, therefore getting it up to the correct temperature for soldering quicker than just having a dry, hot soldering iron on it. That's why it's usually a good idea to tin these leads as well. I didn't tin them at all before wrapping them up, but it is a very good idea, and most people will recommend that you do that. Tinning just means that you heat it up ahead of time and soak a little bit of solder into it, so it's easy and it's ready to solder. Get a little wet solder on there, and then we'll put our soldering iron on the wire, and you'll see the wire starts to bubble, and then it melts the solder like crazy. Tin it. So right now I'm holding the soldering iron against this wire, and then I'm touching this to the opposite side of the wire. That way I know that it's not just my soldering iron melting the solder, and that it's not, and not knowing whether or not it's actually bonding to the leads. So to make sure it bonds to the leads, we heat the leads and then use that to melt the solder that we're actually making the connection with. Alright, these look good. Blow on it, get them started cooling down. I'm going to grab a tweezers here, and I'm going to get these little blobs out of here so they don't become a nuisance later. Now I didn't mention it, but you may have noticed that I did not have these hanging out over the gap while I was doing the soldering. I made sure that they were pulled back, where if I did drip solder, it would drip down into here, not all over my cone and melt it, and not down into the gap, where it could solder my gap shut or cause some problems with my coil former, which will cause my sub to scrape later and possibly just turn around and blow again. Our leads look good. Everything's good. It's cooled down now, so we're just going to tuck them through the holes, corresponding holes. Reach through with the other side, gently pull them. I'm going to get them laid down flat right here. Once we get them all laid down flat, we're going to dress our leads. Now, dressing our leads means we're going to glue them not only to the hole, but we're going to glue everything, particularly this really thin little wire coming off the coil, down and encase it in adhesive so that it can't vibrate and break on us while the sub is playing. Now in this kit we do not include a special adhesive for dressing the leads, so in this case it will take it a little longer than normal to dry because we're not going to use a standard lead dressing. We simplify the kit. We are going to use our BSC adhesive that we use to glue our foam down, and our spider, and eventually our gasket and dust cap. So we'll shake that up again. We got everything good. Everything's laying down. You can see the leads are coming out on both sides, going in the right direction toward the contacts. I will usually take my bottle, clean up your tip, and start with it on the hole and squirt hard. You want to force a little bit through past the lead wire and down into that hole, so we're gluing it into the hole, and then get underneath. You're creating a bed of this stuff that you're squirting under the lead to cushion it, pat it, and then come over the top. So we're encasing it completely in rubber. I'll do the 4 of these and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the lead dressing on here. I've let it sit about 10 minutes. It's starting to tack up pretty good, but it is a pretty good blob of the black stuff. Now that's going to take a little while to cure. While we're letting that cure, we're going to move on to a few other steps before we put the dust cap and pull the shims. We've got our original gasket for this particular customer. We're going to go ahead and reuse this gasket per his request. However, if we didn't have that gasket, we could use our Rubitex gasket at this time. And usually when we put them on, we'll line them up, do the opposite pieces, and then we can come in and split the difference with the remaining pieces. It ends up with a nice tight fit. However, since we're not using the Rubitex today, I'm going to go ahead and put these to the side. But if you bought our kit, you will have these in the kit. You can use them on another sub if you don't need to use them for this. So, and if you get our 10-inch kit, then you're going to get a gasket like this for the 10W6 with the little vinyl top. However, it's going to be slightly thinner than the original one. So, but let's see how this lines up here. We're ready to glue it down. We're going to get out our BSC again, black adhesive. And here we need to prepare. We're going to need something like clamps, clothespins. We use these plastic welding clamps. They don't hurt anything. They're strong enough to do the job, yet they're not so strong that they cause damage to anything. And they're plastic. They're not metal digging into something. They are plastic, so they're cheap. They're easy to use. So we keep a lot of those around for just this situation. This is nice if you've got a turntable to set your gasket upside down in position and slowly work around, and we're going to put a bead of this, a small bead on each of these tabs. Okay, I'll take that. I'm going to set it right over here. And this little space in here where I said not to get sloppy before, now we're going to go ahead and get some adhesive into the space between the edge of the foam and the outer lip. Just nice and easy, little bead all the way around. And there we go, we're rocking. So, let everything breathe a little bit. We can blow on it a little bit. Again, remember this is solvent-based adhesive. We've got to let that solvent start to dry out just a little bit. That's going to give us a really good tack from the moment we stick it down. Now we're going to find a hole. We're going to line up our notch with that hole. Carefully set this in place. Look all around. Looks like our holes line up great. Make sure that our roll isn't tucked under at all. So go all the way around and give our roll just a slight little nudge to make sure that it's not tucked under, accidentally underlapped on the gasket. And then we're going to do clamps. Clamps are easy. Start on one side, go opposite for the next one. Come to these. they're easy if you put them on correctly. Make sure that both of your tabs are straight. If you use this kind of clamp, you don't want to have it turned like that. You need them straight so they can grip correctly. So we've got that, and we're going to take 4 more on this particular gasket. It's nice with this one-piece gasket. 8 is more than sufficient. If you have the Rubitex gasket, then you're going to want to have usually 1 in the middle of each one. Actually, 8 would be the same there. You're going to have 1 in the middle of each one as you go around, and then 1 on each joint as you go around. So you will need 8 if you're going to use clips like this, clamps like this. So we're going to clamp that in place. We're going to let this start to set up, and in the meantime, it's time to look at our lead wires. You can see where our lead wires come through here. We need to thread these through the hole. Oop. You know what? I'm going to clean these up a little bit. I'm going to get the super shears. Got them right here. And I'm going to snip those ends just a little bit cleaner. So it's easier to get them through these little tiny holes that we have on the back here. It's being a bugger. You know what? That one might not be clean enough. No, I don't think it is. So I'm going to ream it out just a little bit. 90-degree pick is handy for a lot of things, including that. Sometimes it's a little tough to work with this, and we grab a set of tweezers that has a 90-degree end on it. Give me just 1 second. Okay, I got the correct tweezers now. I misspoke. It's not a 90-degree. It's more of about a 30-degree. The point is it allows me to get back behind that contact plate. So I can do that. There we go. A lot easier if you have the right tools. I'll do the other side. Thread those through real quick. Okay, so now we've got them pulled through. You can see we do not want to solder these tight. See how they're kind of tight here? We don't want them. We need to leave a little bit of slack in them so that the cone can freely go in and out without these tightening up and snapping. It's a common problem when people start doing some of their own recones, is they will do that and then they've got an issue. So we need to have a little bit of slack in them. But you don't want so much slack that they can tighten. Can you see that in there? We don't want so much slack. Let me see if I can get a better angle for you. You need to have a little bit of slack in them, like this maybe. But if you have so much slack that they can touch, then you're looking for a short. You don't want a short. You're just going to blow your sub again. So they've got to have enough slack where they can flex, but not so much slack where they can actually touch. If you do have them where they can touch, then you need to go ahead and get some shrink tube, which I believe we include in these kits as well. I'm not going to install it on this one, but we do have a shrink tube that you can slide onto the leads and keep them from shorting out. It's kind of makes it foolproof or idiot proof, if you will. That's not good there. There we go. In fact, we're going to take these off of here now. It's been a little while. Okay, we are back. We've got the clamps off there. I'm going to take off the turntable here. Take that out so it doesn't cause us a headache. I'm going to tip this up on its side, and we are going to solder our leads. I'm just going to get that on there. Got our solder. Let's tin it, and then get that hot solder bubbling away. That is going to heat the lead and the plate that we are soldering to, and you're going to see your plate kind of, it will slowly cloud over. There, it just went dull. I don't know if you saw that, but it's not shiny anymore. It's dull colored now. That means it has reached temperature. We'll push this in where we want it. A little dab of solder on there. Hold it there. Blow on it. Blow on it a little bit more. Get it cooled in place. Okay. We're going to have to come back and check that solder joint and make sure it didn't get cold on us. I'm going to get this hot. Tin it. You'll see the color of the mounting tab go cloudy. I don't know if you can tell it in the video, but it just went cloudy. So the color of our mounting tab is now hot enough for the solder to take. It's smoking a little, so we're going to get this on there. Hold it in place. That's not working. Here, we'll do this. We'll pinch it in place like this. There we go. My hand's not steady enough anymore. And just so you realize, I'm only tipping this up on edge so you can see it on the camera. Normally, I would have this down like here, and I would get down underneath. It's easy to hold everything steady. I'm struggling right now to hold the sub up on edge so you can see what I'm doing and still solder correctly. So I'm going to heat up this one again because I just don't feel good about it. See if I can hold it up at the same time. Get a little hot solder on there to start everything else melting. There. Now we'll hold that in place. Let off, blow. Now we're waiting for the shine of the solder to go away. When the shininess of the solder goes away, we know it's cooled enough that it's not going to move. So now we've got that side soldered. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Okay, we've got our leads soldered. I'm going to go under here, make sure we've got good slack, yet it can't touch anywhere, so we've got good slack there. We've got good slack here, yet they can't touch, so we did that well. At this point, we can go ahead and snip. Oop. Magnet wants to grab the shears there. We're going to snip off our excess. Alright, now we're going to get out our multimeter. As you know, W6 is a dual 6 ohm sub. It's kind of weird. JL Audio has all these weird ohmages. They've got 6s and 3s and 4s and single 3s and everything else. But take this one. Let me move that over a little bit and we'll get this where you can see it. And we've got our ohm meter here. We've got it set to, on the ohms, we've got it set to 200. Makes it nice and easy. And we're going to check our contacts. See, we're getting a signal. Look at that. 6 ohms. Beautiful. Check the other side. .9, 5.8. We'll check this side again. Oh, you know what? I'm moving the cone. There's a problem. I was moving the cone a little bit. That one's exactly 6. And that one's 5.9. So we're right on par with where we need to be. Got our dual 6 ohm sub ready to go. Now we're down to the very last touches, okay? We've completed the job. We still have to glue down our dust cap, which we have already scuffed the edges on. I need a piece of masking tape, just a few inches long, that we can work with. I'm going to grab the wide tape here, rip off a little piece. Basically, I'm going to make a handle. Just wrap it around, doesn't matter how you do it, as long as it's sticky side out. Make yourself a little bit of a handle and stick it on there. Now you've got a way to pick this up and set it down so you don't have to try and hold the edges when they've got adhesive on them. Make sure your edges are clean. Okay. This one in particular was originally set up with the logo perpendicular to the leads, so we're going to eyeball that. We can already see where it needs to go because we have our little line there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our BSC glue again. Now don't forget, you still got shims in here. I'm just prepping to glue the dust cap down. We do not want to forget to remove those shims. Shake that up. We're going to put a little bead of the adhesive all the way around this bad boy. Don't get crazy with it, just a nice small amount. And we need to let this breathe a little before we stick it down. The reason being, if we stick it down when it's all gooey, it's going to squish out the sides. We're going to clean it up a little bit before we do it so that it doesn't squish out the sides and make a big mess all over the cone. So we'll get our bead all the way around there. Put the cap on, set it to the side. I'm going to set this like that. Put it right here so it can dry a little bit without getting sticky stuff on anything. Then we're going to come back here and we're going to pull out our shims. Make sure you get all your shims. Uh-oh, can't get that one out of there. There we go. So we've got a cone that goes in nice, in and out, nice and easy. Our gap is nice and even all the way around because we shimmed it. We can discard our shims at this point. We're still letting that adhesive set up just a little bit more. And I'm going to kind of treat this like it's, I don't know what I should say here, but I really want this to be nice and clean. But I need to leave that a little bit of that pencil line there from earlier so we can make sure we line up well. So I'm just going to wet my paper towel, a little saliva will work fine. We're dabbing up all that dust. We don't want any dust there getting down in there and affecting our bond. Okay, we get our dust cap back, run around the edge one time, make sure we get any excess off the edge. Need to do one more little dab right here. See where I missed just a little bit. Alright, and we're ready to stick this thing. So, we line it up perpendicular in this case. Get bearings between this hole and this hole and try and get our line of sight and get to our pencil mark. Nice and even all the way around. Let's eyeball it. Looks nice and straight. We're good there. We'll take our roll of tape, set it on there nice and centered. That's going to put even pressure all the way around. Then we can take something with just a little bit of weight to it. I'll grab that can of acetone and I will put it on here. So we've got a little bit of weight allowing it to hold the dust cap down in place while the adhesive cures. We're going to give this adhesive for the dust cap probably, I think a safe amount is probably 2 hours to cure before we pull this weight off and allow the thing to cure. Then we're going to let the whole thing dry for 36 hours before we put any volume to it at all. We really want it to set up well. When you're working with poly, you really got to make sure that that adhesive takes, because otherwise it'll peel off very easily. So I think we did a good job on it. We're going to let this thing dry. It's been, we're going to give it 36 hours, and it's been a pretty easy repair. you're going to see that when you get into your own sub, it's really not difficult. The JL Audios are pretty simple to work with. You use a lot of black glue, a lot of plastic, and a lot of foam. But get our genuine kit. You can get it on eBay, Amazon, or from our website, SpringfieldSpeakerRepair.com. That's SpringfieldSpeakerRepair.com. And that's it. It's a simple repair. If you have any questions, you can give us a call anytime at 1-800-397-9575. That's 800-397-9575. That's it. Thank you.